Hello and welcome to this video where I'm going to explain to you what complex numbers are. So let me first talk about something slightly different. Let me talk about another type of numbers that you're already familiar with. So give it a shot. Can you solve this equation? What is x equals to? Well, you won't find it hard at this point to solve it, but the question is, do negative numbers exist? I mean, do you go down the street and you find -2 apples or -2 oranges hanging around? You don't. So what is a negative number anyway? I mean, what is a negative number at all? Do you really know what it means? And not only that, but I mean, why is 4 minus -1? Why is it 4 plus 1? And why is -4 times -1 plus 4? I mean, how does it work? Where does this all come from? You take it for granted, sure. You're used to it, and it is because it is, but really, why? It's an interesting question, and we can talk about it. It defines some definitions of like multiplication and addition, for example, but it's really interesting to wonder, stop for a second and realize what is a negative number anyway. Once you do that, you realize, well, negative numbers, sure, we're used to them and we understand them and you can visualize them, and for you it's not strange to talk about negative numbers. Something similar, I hope, will happen to you with complex numbers. They are strange, but they will make sense. So let's start with it. The imaginary part. What do you mean by the imaginary part or the imaginary number? Try solving this equation here. Now, what's going to happen? Well, this is what's going to happen. You can end up with x equals square root of -1. Actually, you end up with x equals plus or minus square root of -1, but for simplicity, let's leave it at that. X equals square root of -1. Now, put that in your calculator. What do you get? You get non-real answer. What does that mean? It means that it's not real answer. What you're getting is a complex number. So in a way that like to be able to solve x plus 2 equals 0, we came up with negative numbers. To be able to solve certain equations, we're going to come up with this thing. We're going to come up with the imaginary number. And we call a square root of -1, we call it I. And that really is the fundamental cornerstone of all complex numbers. Is the definition that square root of -1 is equal to I, to this imaginary number. That's it. Really, it's just that's the great idea. Okay, that's really it. No more to it. Really, that's what happens. That's what complex numbers are. It's just a number that has an imaginary part, which is square root of -1. End of the story. Full stop. Can we move on? Sure, but here's the thing. It's a simple idea, but a lot of things happen because of this idea. We can continue where before we had to stop. So now we're going to have a whole new set of mathematics coming up. So, for example, basic solutions to all problems. Okay, can you solve this now? Well, it's going to be x squared is equal to -4, so x is equal to plus or minus square root of -4, which is equal to x plus or minus square root of 4 times square root of -1. Remember, if I have -4, I can separate it to -1 times 4. And if it's a square root of a multiplication, I can separate that into 2 square roots that are multiplying. So what do I end up with now? Well, plus or minus 2i. Different, right? Because it's -4, it's not -1 anymore. So I end up with plus or minus 2i. How about this one here? Well, x squared plus 4 equals 3. I take the -4 to the other side. It becomes -1. And I end up with x equals plus or minus I. So there you go. I can sort of carry on where before I couldn't move on. Before I had a negative square root, and that was it. I would stop doing my exercise and say either there's something wrong or I can't go on. Now you can. Now you're expected to go on because you know about complex numbers. Just as a small practice, why don't you give a shot to solving these equations now, which before you wouldn't be able to solve. I recommend it. It's interesting. So ultimately, what is a complex number? Because I haven't really said what a complex number is. I've just said what the imaginary number is. So what is a complex number? Okay, so square root of -1 is equal to the imaginary number. We got that. I hope at this point you understand that. Great. So here's a complex number, 2 minus I. Can I operate that? No, I can't do 2 minus square root of -1. So I leave it like that. Or -3 plus 2i. Or 4 minus 3i. These things here are complex numbers. V, W, and V. I give them those numbers like I could give numbers to A, B, C to numbers 8, -1, and 200. I'm just giving these names to these complex numbers. The complex numbers are 2 minus I, -3 plus 2i, 4 minus 3i. That's a complex number. And a complex number is always going to have two parts. It's going to have a real part. It's my good old friend, like the standard numbers, the real numbers. It's going to have an imaginary part. In this case, excuse me, it's not 3, it's -3 would be the imaginary part, okay? But that's what a complex number is. It's just a real part and an imaginary part. And all together, put them together, that's a complex number. So what are we going to be doing with it? We're going to be operating with complex numbers. Just going to add them, subtract them, multiply them, etc. See what happens. Adding them is really easy. You can do it straight away. If I get 2 minus I plus, that will do minus 3 plus 2i. Well, I'm going to end up with 2 minus 3 minus I plus 2i minus 1 plus I. There you go. I just added z plus w and I get a different complex number. You can try these operations if you want, just for practice. You see, it is how it looks. It is. Remember, the I is the square root of minus 1. Don't look for anything much more complicated than that. And if you want to move ahead, why don't you try this one here? Multiply two complex numbers together. And think about it. When I multiply square root of minus 1 times square root of minus 1, what am I going to get? I'm going to get minus 1. Let's give it a shot, but we'll talk about this next time. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.